Shay, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sarah, thanks for having me. Excited to dive in.
Oh, me too. First of all, I want the people to know how you and I got connected. And that's through this online world of social media,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And so tell everybody a little bit about what you do, who you are, and how sports has played a big role in your life.
Yeah. I mean, sports has played a huge role in my life. So, I currently am a confidence, mental performance, emotional resilience coach. And I really got into it because when I was young, when I was 12 years old, before that, I was really confident, played soccer and basketball. And then when I was 12, I tore my ACL. So, like going through a traumatic injury at such a young age was really hard physically, but more so like mentally and emotionally. And I totally lost all my confidence. I really struggled with confidence in the sport all the way. I mean, college was a little bit better, but it was still tough. And it was just this constant, self doubt. I started to lose my love of the game. I almost quit when I was 15 because I just was not confident and not having fun. And then in college, I kind of had hit rock bottom my junior year. And I had a horrible season. I was like, I only got one season left. I wasn't starting. I was being a bad teammate. It just was not a good year. Had another injury. And then finally, like in between junior and senior year, I was like, there's got to be something more that I can do other than just train more and work out more. Like, there's got to be something more I can do. So I started like diving into, mental performance and sports psychology and like started taking some classes and just kind of diving into that. And then my senior year, like I learned some techniques and just kind of started changing my mindset. And senior year was like a complete 180 from junior year. And so senior year ended up awesome, team captain. And then when I started coaching after college, I was, coaching 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, even college kids. I realized that like I was not alone in how I felt as a teenage girl. Like these girls are going through the exact same things as me and a little bit different and even worse with social media. And maybe we'll get into that. But that there just wasn't many resources out there for them. And so that's why I kind of shifted from, soccer coaching to more of the mental performance confidence thing, because I just saw such a big need for it.
That's so cool. Will you share a little bit about, because you just mentioned you obviously played soccer and a bunch of different sports growing up, but at what point did you realize soccer's my thing and this is what I want to do at the collegiate level?
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting because my whole life it was always like soccer, basketball, soccer, basketball. Like I love them both. And I actually was probably had more raw talent in basketball. But I just felt like the opportunities for scholarships, the opportunities, the culture at the time for me was better in soccer. And so I remember it was, I think my freshman year, the high school basketball coach was like, you have to choose. Like, you can't play soccer, you can't go to tournaments and play basketball. And so I was like, well, if I want to play soccer in college, I have to, because these are the tournaments I'm going to get recruited at. Yeah. So I had to make this decision, unfortunately, to quit basketball when I was a freshman. And I really wish I would have been able to play. But then you never know what would have happened. So I had to make that decision much earlier than I would have liked to.
Yeah. So how did that recruiting? So once you kind of quit basketball, because we always say here on the show, you've got to start the process early. And it's not necessarily like the recruiting side of things, but also the academic side of things.
Yeah.
But you're now playing on these travel teams, you're doing the soccer thing. What did that recruiting process look like for you? Because you ended up playing at a Division I school, right?
Yeah, I did. It was tough for me. It was a very emotionally and mentally difficult journey because, like I said, in that time, so freshman, sophomore, those were the big years that we were really getting into it. And I played for a really, really high level team. Like my teammates were getting looked at by North Carolina. One of them went to North Carolina. BYU, Santa Clara, like all of these really, really like cream of the crop, right?
Yeah.
And I was me along with a few other of my teammates were like, we weren't really getting emails back. We weren't really, getting the looks that we wanted. And so a big part of my confidence issues as well was like, I don't belong here. Like, there's no way I'm going to get recruited by, I remember my first dream school was Pepperdine. And I just remember like, there's no way that Pepperdine's going to want me. And so it was a tough process for me. Luckily, my club coach was very well connected. We went to all the right tournaments. We went to all the right showcases. And so I got looked at it's called Surf Cup. It's in San Diego, one of the biggest tournaments. So I got looked at there by a school called Virginia Commonwealth University. I had no idea who they were, but I remember I was sitting in history class and I was checking my email in class, which don't do that, but I was checking my email and I'm like, Virginia Commonwealth, like, what is this? Like Virginia, I wanted to stay close to home, and I was from Utah, so I wanted to stay on the West Coast.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, like, this is the first school that's really expressed interest in me. And the coach was a former Olympian, played with Mia Hamm. And I was like, well, let's give it a shot. So I went on visits there. I got 2 offers, one to VCU and one to Utah State. And I went and visited both. And the culture at VCU in Virginia was just so much better. I love the coaches. It was just like, it felt right. And it also felt extremely scary, which was like, I need to get out of Utah. I need to get out of this comfort zone of Utah. And so I went to VCU for a semester. At 18 years old, it's very hard to be 2,000 miles away from home. So I was only there for a semester. Great experience, but it just wasn't for me. And then I transferred to Utah State. Luckily, they offered me a pretty good scholarship to go play for them. And I'm so glad I did, because it was just the best, 3 years of my life, I could say, was playing there and building. The best part wasn't the soccer. It was just the community, the family, the relationships with the teams and the coaches and all the other athletes.
So, and like, I'm just thinking, because now, like, we hear these stories all the time. Like, kids will be like, oh, like they live in Georgia, but then they're going to go play like school in Washington or California. And they get homesick. And it's something that like they have to weigh out those options. But how have you seen some of those students that you worked with, maybe that plays a big impact on their confidence, and maybe even it had an impact on your confidence, more about the decision-making process?
Yeah, because I think that's a big thing that I see is like, oh, is this going to be the right choice? Like it creates so much stress. Like, I don't know if this is the school for me. It's like, maybe it's not my number one, but like, I like it. And I had a girl I was working with that kind of was feeling that way. And I was like, you know what? Like, your decision, it doesn't have to be the end all be all. Like, you can transfer. Like, we're obviously not aiming for that, but like, you can change your mind. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to say, you know what, I'm not happy here. I'm going to go somewhere else. So that's what I like to remind, kids of as they're going through the recruiting process, is like, really listen to your gut, really listen to your heart. Like, forget the status, forget like all the other stuff that looks good on paper. Like, what feels right to you? Go with that. And if it doesn't work out, like, you have other options. And that, I think, relieves a lot of the pressure and stress that goes all along with the recruiting process.
Yes, I love that you said that. Like, it's okay. Like, make the decision. And I've said it before with students, it's like, you have to weigh your pros and your cons, but in the end, you got to go with your gut.
Yes.
And the thing about it is, even if you get there and you don't feel it, it's not in your gut, those are the conversations you have with your parents, with your coaches, with the, coaching staff, everything like that, and figure out where you belong, because there is a place where you belong. And that's just all of this process. But you also have to do a lot of soul searching in yourself to know and be confident in those decisions.
Right. And it takes confidence in your decisions, but also you gotta trust yourself and trust your decisions, and not rely on mom and dad's opinion. And obviously you take that feedback and you take their opinion, but you can't make your decisions purely off of what your parents want or what, other people want. And I've seen that with basketball players that I've worked with. Their community and everything was like, they want me to go to this school. And I'm like, well, what do you want? It's like, don't like factor that in. Like, you have to live your next 4 years of your life there. So don't do it for other people. Like, make sure it's right for you.
Yeah. Like, and I think that's what, gosh, I start thinking about all these things. I start thinking about how confidence plays a part in all of this. So like, why is it so important that we build confidence at such an early age? Because you were even talking about 12 years old. That's when you started to struggle.
Yeah. It really is. And it's crazy. Like, in my Facebook group, I'll have parents, like, I have 10-year-olds in my program, but I'll have parents like 7-year-olds and reaching out. And I'm like, it's not necessarily too early, but it's too early for what I do. But it really is. I think confidence is kind of the foundation. So I'm going to say confidence, self-love, self-worth. We can all put those together, right? So I'm going to say those, like confidence, self-love, self-worth, is really the foundation to just being a good human being.
Yeah.
Like the more confident you are in yourself, the more you love yourself, the more you can pour out to others, the more you can take chances in your life, the more, better relationships you'll have with other people. But it really starts with the relationship with yourself. And like, you can look at this, a good example is like bullying, right? There's lots of bullying that goes on, cyberbullying in school, whatever. And a lot of the time, I think maybe 100% of the time, I think the bully has a major self-confidence issue, a major lack of self-love and self-worth. And so like, if we all just loved ourselves a little more, I honestly just think the world would be such a better place, because we would do things out of love, not out of like trying to get approval or trying to like necessarily achieve things. It's like, it really is, I think, the foundation for just like reaching your goals and doing what you want to do and making an impact in the world.
Oh, that's so good. Because I'm even thinking about like, our student athletes, sometimes they have these really big goals and these really big dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Something's holding them back. Something's holding them back from reaching it. So like, what are those things, or like the trends that you're seeing when you work with these student athletes, of things that are holding them back?
Number one, without a doubt, fear of judgment.
Oh, okay.
Specifically, and I can't speak for boys, maybe different with boys, it may be still fear, but maybe not so much fear of judgment. But I think with girl athletes, and I've kind of developed this listening and observing over the last, 3 years of doing this work, every single fear that we talk about when we go through and we're like, what's the deep rooted fear? Like the fear of failure, fear of not being good enough. Well, what's the deep rooted behind that? A lot of time it's fear of judgment, like fear of what other people are going to think of me. And let's think about like college. Like if they want to go to a certain school, but it's like, I don't want to put myself out there because I don't want to make a mistake. And if I make a mistake, people are going to think I'm not good enough and people aren't going to like me. And if we're going to get really, really deep here, I think for kids, and I mean, even for adults looking back at their, inner child, a lot of it is like the fear of not being loved by your parents, which is, I would say, a fear of judgment. But I know that like a lot of the things that I've been talking about with my girls is like, you have to like be okay with being judged, because you're going to be judged no matter what. You're going to be judged. And if you are not okay with being judged, you're going to let other people dictate how you live your life. And when you stop living your life the way you want to, when you don't take the chance, when you don't try out for the team, when you don't talk to that person because you fear judgment, you're giving those people your power. You're saying, here, you get to decide how I'm living my life. And it can be as simple as like, for me, when I was a kid, like I wanted to dress a certain way. I didn't want to dress like a girly girl, but I feared judgment. And so it's like, I was giving those people my power and saying, here, you get to decide who I am and how I live and what I wear. So I think that's the biggest thing that stops girls specifically from reaching their goals and just their full potential, is just like their fear of judgment.
So thinking of this and knowing that this is kind of the trend that you see, what are like steps that you recommend? What are steps that you've even seen some of these girls do to really break that barrier?
Yeah, really good question. So in my opinion, we all, to a point, we want to be liked. We care what people think about us. I care what people think about me, right? I feel like it's just, that's a normal human emotion to be liked. You want to feel like you belong. So that's normal. So it's not necessarily to like be like, just don't care. That's not going to work, number one. But it's more so like, the more we can love ourselves, the less we care what other people think of us. The more we can love ourselves, the less we're going to let other people dictate how we live our life, right? Like if you're really, really confident in yourself and someone comments on your shirt, you're not going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to wear this shirt again. No, you're going to be like, that's okay. They don't like the shirt. I love it. And I'm going to work it. Right. So it really does come down to like just getting them to love themselves on the deepest level. So not only love the great parts about them, but also love the parts about them that they don't necessarily like, and love and accept. And like, I was telling girls a story about a part of my body that I really didn't like. It was yesterday or earlier this week on our coaching call, because we were talking about this exact topic. And I was like, I used to like let other people dictate. Like I used to hide, and I used to not go to the swimming pool, and I used to not wear a swimsuit because I was so scared of what other people thought. Right. But then it's like, the more I got confident in myself, 20 years later, now it's like, yeah, I still care. I still don't love that part about myself, but I can accept it, and I'm not going to let it like stop me from living my life.
Yeah. Oh, and I just continue to think now, you and I weren't impacted in this way when we were kind of going through our collegiate careers, or even like as, going through the recruiting process. But how have you seen social media actually have such an impact on confidence level when maybe some people are actually doing the work and they're working through that, but then boom, like someone comments, someone says something and unfollow or anything like that?
Yeah. And I'm so glad that I did not have social media.
Yes.
Aren't you? Like,
oh my gosh, so thankful every single day. Like that was not even a factor.
I know, man. I'm so glad I didn't have it. It's funny, Sarah, like I literally just, because I know, like I have this conversation a lot, how it affects them. But I posted in my Facebook group this morning, actually, I said, does your daughter have social media? If so, does it negatively or positively impact her confidence and mental health? And we have some really good discussion going. Like everyone's saying negative, but also they're saying how hard it is as a parent. So that's a whole other topic of how parents, and I don't have all the answers on that. But yeah, I think it's made a massive, a lot of it negative impact on kids, because all you got to do is go click a button and you can start comparing yourself. Now, I'll be totally transparent. I did that the other day. I got on Instagram, and I saw someone's post, and I was like, oh, I don't like how I feel. And so what did I do? Number one, I muted this person. No, not that I don't like the person, not that their stuff isn't great, because it is, but I needed to like not see their stuff for a few days so that I could come back to myself. So I did that. And then immediately I got off social media. So there are so many positive resources on social media, so many. So it's like, we have to learn to, I think it's like being really in tune with your feelings and how you're feeling on social media. Like going on intentionally. So it's like going on intentionally, typing in, Sarah, go and listen into your videos and stuff, and being intentional. Number one. Number two is like, when you notice that you're feeling not good enough, or you notice that you're feeling angry or jealous or envious, it's like, can you be self-aware enough to get off the app? Mm-hmm. So that's another thing. And just like, that's one tool that I've used, is muting people and I don't mute them for very long. Maybe it's a couple of days, maybe it's a couple of weeks, but I just like need that time for me to like not see their stuff, because it keeps bringing up something in me. So those are some kind of tools I've used.
Well, and I'm thinking too, like, as you mute somebody, it's not like you're like unfollowing them and
saying,
like,
exactly.
oh, I can't do this, but you're like, I just need to separate myself a little bit. And then you become more self-aware of those feelings. And when they do spark back up, you can identify what were the words that they were saying that allowed me to like go into that place of like feeling icky or like whatever that may be. And, we have this discussion all the time about like staying in your lane, like not getting distracted by other things around you. And that is being able to do that really settles down all the distractions.
Yeah. And another big thing too, and I found this in myself, is that I mentioned intention earlier, like sometimes I'll go on social media and I'll be like, oh, I want to watch this person's video, and I'll go watch it and I'll get off. Right. And it's really good for me. But there's other times where just out of pure boredom during a commercial, or just like, I need a mental break, we all do it. We grab our phones and we just mindlessly scroll. Now that's where I feel the worst about myself, is when I'm just mindlessly scrolling. So if you can also be aware that when you're getting on social media, try to be intentional with it. If you're just going to get on to have a mental break and scroll, it's better go do something else. But if you're going to do it, maybe just give yourself a time limit. Maybe, give yourself 5 minutes. When the timer goes off, boom, I'm getting off, so that it doesn't turn into this like rabbit hole kind of thing.
Those are such great tips. So Shay, you know, the podcast is called Confessions from the Sidelines.
Oh, I have a lot.
So I want to know, what is your favorite memory of standing on the sidelines?
Like being injured, or like what specifically?
Like maybe it's like when you were coaching, maybe it's when like you were like not in the game at the time, or like it could totally be just your favorite memory overall of like sports.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I would say, I think it was my senior year. And okay, yes, I got it.
Okay,
So it was my senior year, and I played an amazing game. It was the semifinals in the Mountain West Conference Championship. So my quite possibly, actually, sorry, quarterfinal. So it quite possibly was the last game of my career. So I played a really good game, but then we went to PKs, and I'm not the greatest PK taker. So I was put on the bench, which I was totally fine with. Right. So we're playing in Nevada. And maybe it was New Mexico. And so they were the home team. We were not supposed to win that game. We went into PKs, and I can like see it so clear in my mind. The last PK, and me just sprinting onto the field. Like there's actually a picture of me and my coach like sprinting onto the field, just like like doggy pile, like coolest thing ever. Cause it meant, number one, we were going to go, play San Diego in the semifinal, but also meant I got one more game. I got to play one more game. And those two games were probably, I would say I could bring so many memories from those two games. Probably one of the times where I felt the most joy in my life was those moments.
That's so good. And, as a former soccer player, we all know the heartbreak and the joy that comes with ending a game on PKs every single time.
I know. It's just like when you win them, it's just like you really got to soak it up, because it's totally, one is devastation and the other one is pure joy. So yeah.
Right. It's totally different emotions altogether. Yeah. So Shay, where can parents and students find you? You mentioned your Facebook group a couple of times, so I want to make sure people know about that. And then how can they hang out with you online?
Yes. So the best place for parents is my Facebook group. So if you just go into Facebook and you type in Alpha Girl Confidence, you should be able to find the group there. I go live once or twice or three times a month, depending on the month. And then for players, they can find me on Instagram at Shay Haddow, and then also Twitter. I kind of do it all at Shay Haddow as well, and on Instagram and Twitter. So those are the spots. And then the Alpha Girl Confidence podcast as well.
Yeah. And we'll be sure to link all of those resources in the show notes to the podcast. And then you also have a book, right?
I do have a book. It's called She the Confident. You can find it on Amazon, or if you just Google She the Confident, you'll find it there. So yeah.
Yeah, and we'll link that Amazon link as well in the show notes. But yeah, Shay, thanks so much for being here. It was so great to chat with you.
Yeah, awesome conversation. Thanks, Sarah.